This is about abrupt global warming and pending the global drought and global famine. The one of the German minister of food or something like that just announced recently that the famine from the drought is going to be as bad. It hasn't been this bad since just after World War II. And so, due to Putin's genocidal invasion of Ukraine, where 15% of the world's food supply is grown, and that's the main source for the UN World Food Program wheat supply, and also in the Middle East. So Egypt is trying to get their wheat from India instead of Ukraine, but India just lost 25% of their wheat due to drought. And so I had a debate with someone online last night about whether a person should be vegetarian for the due to abrupt global warming. And my response is that if when the animals, the herbivores, are hunted in a ecological predation, then they store the carbon into the soil, and the soil fertility increases. And this is how the prairie soil was created by the 50 million bison or buffalo. And so the regenerative agriculture has been proven to store carbon by doing intensive rotational grazing that mimics the predation of animals on the herbivores. And then the response is that, well, if you're a meat eater, you lack the moral integrity. And to this I defer to Helga Vollrich, the anthropologist who studies. She lived with the original human culture, the Bushmen in Botswana, and so she points out that, being a hunter is, for them, it's the most difficult thing they can do because first of all, it's extremely difficult to track an animal and to actually successfully hunt it, but also the emotional, they don't enjoy the killing of an animal. And so she says this is exactly the opposite of the sport hunting that's found in farming cultures. So when people who are farmers then say, well, we should all be vegetarian, they're ignoring the fact that in the original human culture, even the spirits, the trees and the plants, had spirits that were considered just as much as the animals, and also that the spirits were considered to then return back to the original source of reality that no one can know, the numb energy. And so Helga Vollrich points out that one of the elder shaman healers, the spiritual healers, said that, how can we know what happens to a spirit when it dies? This is so whenever an animal is killed, they have to say a prayer that they're going to meet, their spirits will meet eventually into the same place, to this great unknown. And this great unknown is even beyond their God, the San Bushmen, what they had a word for God. And so that they said that the most important thing in the world is love, unconditional love, and that so even if an animal dies, it's important to consider the spirit for. So, for example, if they kill a bird, they won't eat it until the next day, because they know that the spirit of the bird would then tell the other birds that the humans are hunting the birds. And so, and then she points out how she was going to conduct an interview under this one tree, and the Bushmen refused to do it because they said the spirit of the tree wouldn't be happy. You know, they were basically punishing the tree because it was already suffering from other kind of ecological damage. And so why submit it to more trauma from this? So it's the idea that trees also have spirits, and that the trees actually can care for other animals as much as the animals can care for the trees or the other plants. And this is due to this unconditional love as the force of the universe, as a harmonizing force. And that's what the is from listening, a deep listening that's musical. So it's a harmonization through music. So as Helga Vorich points out, the foragers, gatherers would leave behind the seeds that were undesirable, and over time this would cause the food to not be desirable in that area. And eventually, if they had an abundance of food, they would store it. So they would store the nuts, like the San Bushmen. And as humans spread around the earth, they would find abundant food sources like salmon, or in West Asia, it was a big animal hunting. And so they would store the food, and eventually this led to transferring that to agriculture and storing the food from agriculture. And then due to the storage of the food, you got hierarchical society where the technology became patriarchal. So this started around 10,000 years ago, where the transition began to become more patriarchal as the technology required the male physical labor to then control the food source. So when people say, we should be just vegetarian, it doesn't address that root cause of the problem from the patriarchy, control the food source, whereas in the original human culture, the females control the access to the land, even though it's hunting territory. It depends on the water resource of the land and how the access to the water. So now, due to abrupt global warming, the ocean food supply is also rapidly depleted, and so we can't grow food at scale, since the interior of the continents are so much hotter on average. So they're like 5 degrees Fahrenheit hotter on average. And so the Mega-Drought is going to keep getting worse. And then people say, well, we should just all grow food in greenhouses, but the collapse of civilization means that there's a complexity to the supply chain, as we've discovered from the pandemic and the Putin's genocidal invasion of Ukraine and the U.S. Genocidal invasions before that of Afghanistan and Iraq, and so the hunting originally was a completely different culture than the modern sport hunting, and the regenerative agriculture is trying to restore the soil as it was originally intended in ecology through the hunting culture. And is it a solution? No, because it's too late now. As Jim Massa points out, the oceans have stored over 240 zettajoules of heat that will continue to emit out into the atmosphere and melt the Arctic ice from below. And so Mother Nature is taking revenge with the East Siberian Arctic Shelf methane bomb that will exponentially increase the methane release. And then if we switch to renewable energy, this will further heat the planet due to the aerosol masking effect being diminished, which is, the global dimming effect from the sulfur pollution. So it's a catch-22 situation that's occurred over the last 10,000 years from agriculture, whereas our original human culture was from 100,000 years ago. So 90% of our culture, we lived as hunter-gatherers, and we had a totally different relationship to hunting based on spirituality. And you have to study our original human culture to see how it's tied into the spiritual healing training of the males as hunters. And so that's like a deep dive into our relation to food that most people are never going to do because our original human culture is completely ignored. And it takes you got to study, got to read some books, and I recommend the Radical Anthropology website, but we're talking about a totally different physiology based on the cultural training and creating a psychophysiological change from the energy. So it's more like an initiation. And so the connection to food is obviously a big change, since they didn't have salt, they didn't have sugar, just salt and sugar and caffeine. I mean, all those are vegetarian. You can be vegetarian but still have a very unhealthy diet from caffeine, salt, and sugar, just those three things alone. And it's almost impossible to escape those things in our modern culture. And I definitely, I don't have a pure diet, but in Central Europe, they know that the overweight people survive the famines, which is a sad, tragic truth of reality right now. So hopefully people will have tree farms that can store up water better and practice regenerative agriculture to store increase the soil fertility, and that will also increase the rainfall because there's a bacteria that goes into the air and creates the clouds for the rain, and this has been proven. So you need fertile soil to then have that bacteria. So that's all I'm going to say. Thanks.